My selfish sister scheduled her baby shower on my wedding day thinking everyone would choose her event. But karma struck when the family decided to attend my wedding instead. The incident unfolded just a few days ago, and I'm still seething with frustration, prompting me to share my story here. My older sister, Portia, 30F, embodies what you might call severe main character energy, and it grates on me in every conceivable way. This has been the status quo throughout both of our lives. Typically, I've stayed quiet, as I'm not one to initiate conflict or drama, yet everything escalated on my wedding day when Portia chose to host her fourth baby shower on the same date. I discovered this only a few days before my wedding and was profoundly upset. I had secured RSVPs for my wedding months ahead, so it was clear that Portia's coincidental timing was anything but accidental. The thought of tearing my hair out, or hers, crossed my mind more than once. Given our family dynamics, I feared my relatives might favor her baby shower over my wedding, a pattern all too familiar in our family history. Portia has always been the golden child. For as long as I can remember, I've been relegated to the background. I harbored a slight hope that my wedding day might finally spotlight me. But with her baby shower planned on the same day, Portia seemed intent on overshadowing even this occasion. Our relationship, strained at best, stems partly from our upbringing, but is primarily a result of Portia's pervasive arrogance. She was the quintessential overachiever, stellar grades, athletic prowess, and widely admired by teachers and peers alike. Our parents couldn't have been prouder. On the flip side, I was decidedly average, academically competent but not outstanding, and according to my parents, devoid of any significant hobbies. This disparity was magnified by attending the same school, where teachers and even the principal expressed astonishment at our relation, given our stark differences in attitude and ability. The constant comparisons were inevitable, yet I invariably found myself overshadowed. My parents viewed my comparative lack of achievements with disappointment, always in the shadow of Portia's accomplishment. Portia was coddled from a young age, every whim indulged by our parents because she was the bright child. As a child, I was explicitly told that I could receive the same treatment if only I reached her level of excellence. This conditional affection left me grappling with deep-seated issues of self-worth that have profoundly affected my life's quality. By the age of 13, I had come to the painful realization that a healthy, functional relationship with my family was beyond reach. Resigned to this, I retreated into solitude, spending countless hours in my room, my only solace in doodling. Though it was dismissed by everyone, drawing became my sanctuary, an escape from the constant comparisons. Regarded as the family's surplus member, I was perennially overlooked, left to fend for myself, facing either disdain or outright contempt. Once, in a particularly cruel dismissal of my interests, my mother tore up one of my sketchbooks because I was wasting time instead of striving to make them proud like Portia. It became clear that no effort on my part would ever make them see me for who I was. I would always be perceived as Portia's inferior shadow. I resolved to disengage from family interactions as much as possible, a decision that coincided with Portia's departure for college. Her departure marked a turning point. Portia transformed from the compliant daughter into someone who barely acknowledged our parents. She excelled academically but grew distant, rarely returning calls, avoiding visits home, and spending extravagantly. The extended family gradually came to understand the full extent of my grievances, and while they never explicitly condemned my parents, they supported my decision to maintain minimal contact. This consensus held until 3 months ago, when my mother experienced a severe health crisis. She was hospitalized for several weeks with a complex condition that significantly diminished her quality of life. The prognosis was disheartening. Doctors were uncertain if she would ever fully recover. According to my Aunt Rachel, this ordeal served as a profound wake-up call for my mother. Throughout her hospital stay, she reportedly cried incessantly for me, her baby. I was not immediately informed of her condition due to our estranged relationship. However, a week after her hospitalization, my aunt reached out to relay that my mother was gravely ill and had experienced a stark realization of her past mistreatment towards me. Since then, my mother had been overwhelmed with remorse, desperately wishing to reconnect and make amends before, in her words, it's too late. This revelation left me deeply conflicted. I recognized that her newfound desire to reconcile stemmed more from a fear of dying with guilt than from a genuine concern for me. Yet, I also understood that ignoring her attempt could lead to future regret on my part. After considerable reflection and encouragement from both my aunt and my fiancé, Edward, I decided to reestablish contact. The reunion was emotionally charged, filled with tears and numerous apologies from her side. I chose to let the past grievances go, expressing no desire to delve into or dwell on our painful history. My father, always the stoic, made a modest effort to be cordial, though his pride prevented him from fully acknowledging his fault. We exchanged only a few words. Interestingly, Portia was absent from the gathering. I later learned that it was our mother who had explicitly requested her not to attend, a decision that reportedly left Portia quite upset, though powerless to change the situation. Now to the crux of the matter that spurred my need to vent. Amid the whirlwind of wedding planning, I admittedly didn't carve out much time for my mother beyond our initial reconciliations. Truthfully, the stress of the arrangements and my own need for downtime took precedence. This perceived neglect didn't sit well with my parents, especially since they were excluded from traditional wedding roles typically assigned to the bride's parents. My mother, though visibly upset, chose to overlook this slight, hinting at a genuine sense of remorse. My father, however, couldn't mask his displeasure. He was particularly incensed about not being the one to walk me down the aisle. His frustration boiled over during a phone call where he threatened to skip the wedding altogether, claiming the omission was a public insult to his role as a father. I countered by reminding him that our relationship hadn't returned to normal, and if he found the situation intolerable, he was free to absent himself. That silenced him, and he hung up without further argument. Meanwhile, Portia remained off my radar during this period, except for confirming her attendance after receiving her wedding invitation. I assumed that was the end of our interaction, but a shocking revelation was about to unfold. 2 weeks before my wedding, my cousin Lena called me in a panic. She had been speaking to Portia, who brazenly invited her to a baby shower, scheduled for the same day and just an hour away from my wedding venue. Portia had opted for phone calls rather than formal invitations, likely to keep the event under wraps from me. Lena was adamant about the details, confirming that other family members had also been invited. Portia was purportedly making a significant event of it, emphasizing the importance of the occasion as it was to be her and her husband's final child. Portia's audacity peaked when she suggested I should feel fortunate that her unborn child would celebrate with us in spirit. I retorted that she was delusional and vindictive for orchestrating her baby shower on my wedding day, deliberately avoiding any other date. Her failure to consult or even inform me, allowing me to learn about it through third parties just 2 weeks before my wedding, was revealing of her true intentions. In her defense, Portia argued that I had no grounds to criticize her choices or dictate when she celebrated her milestones. She insisted that the date was not mine to monopolize and that our relatives were free to attend either event as they wished. This dismissal left me speechless and, I'm ashamed to admit, triggered a severe emotional breakdown. The shock and helplessness overwhelmed me, and I struggled to come to terms with her betrayal. During this turbulent period, Edward proved to be an invaluable support. He shared my outrage, but managed to maintain composure, guiding us towards a practical response. We crafted a message to our invited guests, articulating that we were aware of the scheduling conflict. We expressed happiness for Portia while clarifying that some guests might face a difficult choice. The message urged guests to confirm their attendance with my maid of honor, emphasizing our desire to avoid further drama and focus on our upcoming wedding. We wanted to ensure we had accurate head counts for the catering and other arrangements, prepared to scale down the celebration if necessary. Though it felt drastic, I was braced for disappointment, haunted by a lifetime of feeling sidelined. But to my relief, the days leading up to the wedding painted a different picture. 2 days before the event, I contacted my maid of honor, Zara, anxious for updates on the guest confirmations. Zara assured me that everything was under control, but her vague responses did little to ease my nerves. I remained in the dark about how many guests might have opted for Portia's baby shower over my wedding, which only fueled my anxiety. Yet, Zara urged me to stay calm and trust her management. On the wedding day, to my astonishment, nearly all the invited family members showed up, excluding Portia, my father, which I half expected, and my paternal aunt's family. Remarkably, even my mother attended, which was a surprise given her usual reluctance to act without my father's presence. The ceremony unfolded beautifully, and in hindsight, my father's absence was a blessing. His presence might have brought unnecessary tension and drama. However, the peace was short-lived. Just as the ceremony concluded and guests began moving towards the lunch area, I spotted my father and Portia approaching the venue. Before I could react, Zara swiftly intervened, blocking their entry. A heated exchange ensued at the entrance, their voices rising. Portia attempted to force her way through, and despite Zara's efforts, my father's presence tipped the scales, allowing them to barge in. Portia's entrance was anything but subtle. She burst into tears, her cries not mere sobs, but loud, infantile wailing. It was beyond embarrassing. It was appalling. Her display, performed in front of Edward's family, our friends, and colleagues, not only spotlighted her own desperation, but also cast a shadow over what had been a joyous occasion. I felt a deep sense of humiliation, witnessing her antics unfold in such a public and poignant setting. As chaos erupted, Portia lamented loudly that everyone had chosen my wedding over her last baby shower, insisting I should have postponed my wedding upon learning of her event. Before I could respond, Aunt Rachel interjected, pointing out that I had set my wedding date months in advance and that Portia was the one who had opportunistically hijacked the date. She firmly suggested that if anyone should have adjusted their plans out of decency, it was Portia. Caught off guard by Aunt Rachel's forthrightness, Portia turned to my father for support. However, he remained unexpectedly silent. In a startling comment, Portia then suggested that marriages often fail, implying that I might have another chance to wed, whereas her pregnancy was her last. Her words were like a slap, implying my marriage was doomed to fail on my very wedding day. Fury took hold, and I nearly lost my composure completely. My inbox is overflowing with messages that I'll eventually have to address, but for now, I'm putting them aside. We're leaving for our honeymoon tomorrow, and I'm determined to recover from the emotional upheaval caused by my sister's actions at the wedding. I refuse to let her influence extend to our honeymoon. She has done enough damage already. Update. Hey Reddit, I apologize for the silence. My honeymoon prompted a hiatus from social media. The overwhelming response to my last post caught me off guard. After digesting all your comments, I realized how engaged you've become with my story, so here's a small update. Throughout the honeymoon, Ed and I consciously avoided any contact with my family. My mother tried repeatedly to reach out, but I deferred all conversations until after our return. Once back, my mother expressed a desire to meet and apologize for not defending me during the wedding, admitting her deep regret. However, I confronted her about her prior knowledge of the baby shower and her decision to withhold that information. She claimed she didn't want to upset me, assuming that our family would choose my wedding over Portia's event regardless. I explained to her that her assumptions were hurtful and demonstrated a continued lack of support for my feelings. Her apologies felt hollow, and I told her I needed space, requesting no further contact. In response, she played the illness card, hoping to elicit my sympathy and justify her actions as attempts at reconciliation. Yet, her actions spoke louder, consistently showing a preference for Portia even at the expense of my wedding day. As she sobbed through our conversation, guilt panged within me for speaking so harshly. However, I recognized the necessity of setting these boundaries to prevent future emotional turmoil. It took me years to establish a sense of mental safety, and I couldn't let my mother simply re-enter my life with the same destructive behavior. I made it clear to her that any future contact would be initiated by me, on my terms, and without any pressure from her to mend our relationship prematurely. Her attempt to play the victim in hopes of manipulating me into reconciliation backfired. When she passed the phone to my father, whom I had no desire to speak with, I promptly hung up. Following that, he sent a lengthy text, which I didn't bother to read before blocking him. Aside from my parents, I received numerous messages from other family members. Many expressed their regret that Portia had tried to overshadow my wedding day, offering their support and sympathy. While I haven't replied to all these messages yet, I plan to do so. This support has helped me feel significantly better about the entire ordeal, affirming my decision to distance myself from my mother again. My resolve to maintain this distance stems from a need to protect the new family I've created with Edward. I simply lack the energy to handle my parents' drama and refuse to let it disrupt the life we are building together. Unexpectedly, the drama continued when Portia's husband, whom I'll call Jake, appeared at my doorstep last evening. He seemed genuinely upset, and despite my reservations, I invited him in. The first thing he did was apologize, confessing he had been unaware of Portia's scheming regarding the baby shower. Jake explained that he had originally planned a baby shower for Portia the week after my wedding. However, Portia had insisted on changing the date to coincide with my wedding, misleading him by claiming she wasn't invited to mine. He admitted he hadn't questioned the lack of an invitation, considering our estranged relationship, and said it would have been surprising if I had included them. His unawareness of the real circumstances and his subsequent apology made me reconsider my initial impressions of him. Jake's visit and his honest account added another layer to the complex family dynamics I've been navigating. His perspective offered a new angle on the situation, highlighting Portia's manipulative tendencies not just towards me, but within her own marriage. This revelation has prompted me to think more deeply about the relationships within my family and the patterns of behavior that have long influenced us. When Jake discovered the full extent of what had transpired at the wedding, he was horrified, learning the truth only through my mother. He expressed deep remorse and wanted to make amends on Portia's behalf, asking if there was anything he could do to rectify the situation. I explained to him that he wasn't at fault as he hadn't been present, and that Portia, as an adult, should take responsibility for her own actions. I stressed that genuine accountability needed to come directly from her for it to hold any significance. While I appreciated his gesture and acknowledged that he seemed like a decent person, I made it clear that his wife's actions were her own to reconcile. I found Jake's visit and willingness to address the issue commendable, yet it didn't change the damage his wife had caused. Even if Portia were to apologize in the future, I knew in my heart that forgiveness was off the table. She had crossed a line that fundamentally altered how I viewed her, setting a course for her own isolation. In a shocking turn of events, I later learned that Portia and Jake were heading for a divorce. Their marriage had been rocky for a while, and her actions at my wedding were the tipping point. Portia began spreading rumors that I was the catalyst for their separation, but it seemed that everyone was tired of her theatrics, and her attempts to garner sympathy were largely ignored. The last update I received indicated that Portia was planning to move back in with our parents, though it was meant to be a temporary solution. She even had the audacity to contact me, requesting that I babysit her children for free as a way for me to atone for supposedly ruining her life. I promptly blocked her on all channels, determined to remove myself from her ongoing drama. Regarding their divorce, Jake is seeking full custody of their children, citing Portia's unstable behavior as detrimental to their well-being. The outcome of their divorce remains uncertain, but it's clear that Portia's reputation has suffered, leaving her with few allies. This ordeal has led me to a firm decision to distance myself from most of my family. The peace I enjoyed before their re-entry into my life is something I am eager to reclaim. Moving forward, I am choosing to maintain relationships only with a few supportive cousins and my Aunt Rachel, who have proven their loyalty through these tumultuous times. I am immensely thankful for the support they provided during the wedding debacle. They have shown themselves to be truly deserving of a place in my life, and I intend to guard those relationships fiercely, ensuring that my boundaries are respected.